I still remember the exact moment my world shattered into a million pieces. It was a Tuesday evening in late October, and the autumn leaves outside our suburban Connecticut home were turning that deep shade of burgundy I'd always loved. I was sitting at the kitchen table, calculus homework spread out in front of me, when Mom and Dad walked in with expressions I'd never seen before. "My name is Maya Chun." Well, that's the name they gave me when they adopted me from China 17 years ago. I was barely 2 years old, small and malnourished, with eyes that held stories I was too young to remember. Sarah and Michael Bennett became my parents, my entire universe. They weren't just good parents. They were everything I'd ever known of love, safety, and home. For 15 years, I was their only child. Their miracle, as Mom used to call me. She'd stroke my hair at bedtime and tell me stories about the day they first held me at the orphanage in Guangzhou, how I'd grabbed Dad's finger and refused to let go. Those were the golden years, the ones I thought would last forever. Then everything changed when Mom got pregnant. I was 15 when they told me. Mom was crying happy tears, and Dad couldn't stop smiling. I hugged them both, genuinely thrilled. I'd always wanted a sibling, someone to share this beautiful life with, someone to protect and love. I spent months preparing, painting the nursery a soft yellow, reading parenting books to help once the baby arrived. Ethan Michael Bennett came into the world on a snowy January morning. He was perfect, tiny fingers and toes, Dad's nose, Mom's eyes. I fell in love with him instantly. I'd rush home from school to hold him, feed him, change his diapers. I was the proudest big sister in Connecticut. But something shifted in the house. Subtly at first, then impossible to ignore. Mom stopped asking about my day. Dad missed my orchestra concerts, the ones he'd never missed before. Family dinners became feeding sessions for Ethan while I ate alone, scrolling through my phone. When I tried to join conversations, they'd shush me because the baby was sleeping. When I asked for help with college applications, Dad said he was too tired, we'd talk later. Later never came. By the time Ethan turned 2 and I turned 17, I'd become invisible in my own home. The walls of my bedroom were still covered with family photos, evidence of a love that seemed to have evaporated like morning dew. I'd catch myself staring at pictures of Dad teaching me to ride a bike, Mom and me baking cookies, wondering what I'd done wrong. The breaking point came on that Tuesday in October. Dad cleared his throat, the sound cutting through the silence like a knife. "Your mother and I have been talking," he began, not meeting my eyes. "We need to discuss something important about your future." My heart started racing. College. They were finally going to help me with college applications. I'd been accepted to 3 schools already, waiting to hear from my dream school, Yale. I smiled, hopeful. "Maya, we think it would be best if you moved out after graduation," Mom said, her voice flat, mechanical. "We need to focus our resources on Ethan. He's our biological son, and raising a child is expensive. We've done our duty by you. You're almost an adult now." The words hit me like a physical blow. Couldn't breathe. The kitchen, with its granite countertops and stainless steel appliances. The kitchen where I'd learned to cook, where we'd celebrated every birthday, suddenly felt like a stranger's house. "What?" I whispered, my calculus homework blurring through sudden tears. "You heard us," Dad said, finally looking at me. His eyes were cold, distant. "We adopted you out of charity, Maya. We gave you a good life. But Ethan is our real son. He deserves the college fund, the stability, everything we can provide. You'll be fine. You're smart. You'll figure it out. Real son." The words echoed in my skull like a death sentence. "But I'm your daughter," I choked out. "You chose me. You said I was your miracle." Mom looked away, rocking a sleeping Ethan in her arms. "Things change," she murmured. "We were younger then, naive. Now we understand what real family means. Blood matters, Maya. You'll understand someday when you have your own biological children." I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. My legs felt like water, my chest tight with a pain I'd never experienced before. 17 years of love, of belonging, of being their daughter, erased in a single conversation. "When do I have to leave?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "Graduation is in June," Dad replied, checking his watch like this was just another business meeting. That gives you 8 months to figure things out. We'll let you stay until then. After that, you're on your own. I walked to my room in a daze, closed the door, and collapsed on my bed. Outside, the autumn leaves continued their silent fall, indifferent to the fact that my entire existence had just been declared temporary, disposable, wrong. That night, I didn't cry. I was too numb for tears. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, wondering how the people I'd loved most in the world had become strangers who saw me as nothing more than an obligation they'd finally outgrown. The next morning, I went to school like nothing had happened. What else could I do? I sat through AP English, chemistry lab, and orchestra practice with a smile plastered on my face that felt like it might crack at any moment. My best friend Jessica asked if I was okay. I lied and said I was just tired. But everything had changed. I couldn't unsee it now, the pattern I'd been ignoring for 2 years. How Mom had stopped packing my lunches but made elaborate bento boxes for Ethan's daycare. How Dad had sold my childhood piano to make room for Ethan's playroom, promising to buy me a new one later, a promise that dissolved into empty air. How family vacations had stopped entirely because traveling with a toddler is too complicated. They'd said. I'd excused it all. New parents are overwhelmed, I told myself. They still love me. They're just adjusting. I was such a fool. The holidays were torture. Thanksgiving arrived, and the house filled with relatives I'd known my entire life. Aunt Caroline, Uncle Rob, Grandma Bennett. They cooed over Ethan, passed him around like a precious gem. I helped Mom in the kitchen, hoping for a moment of connection, but she just handed me dishes to wash while she returned to the living room to be with her real family. During dinner, Grandma Bennett made a toast. To our beautiful grandson Ethan, she declared, raising her glass. The first Rael Bennett blood in this family. Our legacy continues. I felt every pair of eyes carefully avoiding mine. Dad coughed awkwardly. Mom focused intently on cutting Ethan's turkey. No one corrected Grandma. No one said, but Maya's part of this family too. The silence was deafening, confirming what I'd always feared deep down but never wanted to believe. I wasn't really theirs. I never had been. I excused myself, mumbling something about needing air, and locked myself in the bathroom. My hands shook as I gripped the sink, staring at my reflection. Almond eyes, black hair, golden skin. In a family of blue eyes and sandy blonde hair, I'd always stood out. I thought it didn't matter. I thought love was stronger than blood. I thought wrong. December brought new humiliations. My parents enrolled Ethan in an expensive Montessori preschool, the same one I'd attended. I overheard Dad on the phone discussing the tuition, laughing about how it was an investment in Ethan's future. Meanwhile, my college application sat incomplete because the application fees were too expensive, apparently. $65 per school was too much for me, but $15,000 a year for Ethan's preschool was an investment. The message was clear. I wasn't worth investing in. Christmas morning crystallized everything. Ethan's pile of presents towered like a mountain: expensive educational toys, designer clothes, a custom-made wooden rocking horse. My pile consisted of 3 items: a generic Target sweater, a pack of pens, and a book about financial independence titled Making It on Your Own. The cruelty was almost poetic. Everything shifted on a freezing January afternoon, 3 days after Ethan's 3rd birthday party, an event that cost more than my entire year of school expenses combined. I was walking home from my part-time job at the local bookstore, my only source of income since my parents had cut off my allowance months ago. The Connecticut winter bit through my thin jacket, the one I'd worn for 3 years because asking for a new one felt impossible now. My phone buzzed. An email notification. My heart stopped. Yale University. Decision available. My fingers were numb as I opened the email right there on the sidewalk. Snow falling around me like I was inside a snow globe. I read the first line once, then again, then a 3rd time because my brain couldn't process the words. Congratulations, Maya Chin. We are delighted to offer you admission to Yale University's class of 2029. I got in. I actually got in. Full scholarship. Merit-based. They wanted me. One of the best universities in the world looked at everything I'd accomplished despite my crumbling home life and said, yes, you belong here. I ran the rest of the way home, bursting through the front door with tears streaming down my face. Mom was in the living room with Ethan, building blocks scattered across the expensive rug. "Mom," I shouted, waving my phone. "I got into Yale. Full scholarship. I got in." She looked up, her expression blank. "That's nice, Maya. Can you keep it down?" Ethan is concentrating on his tower. I stood there, breathless, waiting for more. Waiting for her to jump up, to hug me, to be proud. Waiting for the mother I used to have to come back. She never looked up again. Dad came home an hour later. I showed him the email, my hands still shaking with excitement and desperation for someone, anyone, to care. "Yale doesn't matter if you can't afford housing and food," he said dismissively. "That scholarship doesn't cover living expenses. Does it? You'll need a job, loans, a plan. We can't help you. We've made that clear." "But Dad, this is Yale," I whispered, my voice breaking. "This was your dream for me. Remember? You used to say I could do anything." "That was before we had Ethan," he replied, turning away. "Our priorities have changed. You need to accept that." Something inside me broke. But it wasn't the kind of breaking that destroys you. It was the kind that burns away everything weak, leaving only steel behind. If you've ever felt invisible in your own life, if you've ever been told you don't matter, stay with me. Because what happened next changed everything, and this is just the beginning of how I proved them all wrong. I went to my room, closed the door, and for the first time in months, I didn't cry. Instead, I opened my laptop and started making a plan. If they wouldn't help me, fine. I'd do this alone. I'd show them exactly what their disposable daughter was capable of. Yale wanted me. That was all I needed to know. I spent every free moment researching. Work-study programs, student loans, budgeting strategies, scholarship databases. I applied to 47 additional scholarships, writing essays late into the night while my parents watched movies downstairs with Ethan. I picked up a second job at a diner, working weekends, saving every penny. Mrs. Rodriguez, my orchestra teacher, noticed the change in me. She pulled me aside after practice one day in March. "Maya, what's going on? You look exhausted." "I'm fine," I lied, but my voice cracked. She saw right through me. The whole story came spilling out. The adoption, the rejection, the Yale acceptance, my parents' abandonment. She listened without interrupting, her eyes growing darker with each revelation. "Come with me," she said when I finished. She drove me to her sister's law office downtown. Patricia Rodriguez specialized in family law. What she told me made my blood run cold. "Your parents are legally obligated to support you until you're 18, Patricia explained. "Kicking you out before graduation, cutting off support while you're still a minor, that's neglect. We could file a case." "But I don't want their money," I said quietly. "I just want to understand why I wasn't enough." Patricia's expression softened. "Honey, this isn't about you not being enough. This is about them failing as parents. And there's something else you should know." She pulled up records on her computer, public documents from the adoption agency. My adoption had come with a settlement, a fund specifically designated for my education, deposited by the Chinese government and the adoption agency. $25,000, untouched, sitting in an account under my parents' names as trustees. Money meant for me. Money they'd hidden. Money they were planning to redirect to Ethan. The betrayal cut deeper than anything before. They hadn't just stopped loving me. They'd been stealing my future. "I'm taking legal action," I decided right there. Not for revenge. For what's rightfully mine. The lawsuit moved quickly. My parents were served papers in April. I'll never forget the look on Dad's face when the process server arrived during Ethan's playdate. Mom called me screaming, accusing me of being ungrateful, vindictive, a snake they'd sheltered. "You raised me to stand up for myself," I replied calmly. "I'm just doing what you taught me." The case went to mediation. My parents sat across the table looking furious and humiliated. Their lawyer advised them to settle. Fighting would cost more than surrendering the education fund and paying the back support they owed. In May, I received a check for $32,000. The original fund plus the support they'd illegally withheld. Enough for Yale's living expenses for my entire freshman year, plus emergency savings. The day I graduated high school, I walked across that stage valedictorian. My parents didn't attend. They said Ethan had a cold. But Mrs. Rodriguez was there. Patricia too. Jessica's whole family came, cheering louder than anyone when I accepted my diploma. That night, I packed everything I owned into 2 suitcases and moved into Mrs. Rodriguez's guest room for the summer. I never went back to that house. Yale in the fall was everything I dreamed of and more. Gothic architecture, brilliant minds, endless possibilities. I threw myself into student life with a hunger that came from years of being told I didn't matter. I joined the Asian Student Alliance, made the orchestra, took on a work-study position at the admissions office. But the wound my parents left didn't heal overnight. Some nights I'd lie awake in my dorm room, listening to my roommate Priya breathe softly in her sleep, and wonder what Ethan was doing. Did he even remember me? Would they tell him he had a sister they threw away? The answer came in November, during Thanksgiving break of my freshman year. I was volunteering at a New Haven soup kitchen when my phone rang. Unknown number. Connecticut area code. I almost didn't answer. Maya? The voice was shaky, older. Grandma Bennett. My throat tightened. Hi? Grandma. I need to tell you something. There was a long pause. I was wrong. What I said at Thanksgiving 2 years ago about real family and blood. I was terribly, terribly wrong. She was crying now. Sarah and Michael won't speak to me anymore. I confronted them about what they did to you, about the lawsuit, the money they stole. I told them they were monsters. They cut me off completely. I haven't seen Ethan in months. I'm sorry that happened, I said carefully, unsure where this was going. Don't be sorry for me. I'm calling to apologize to you. You were my granddaughter. You are my granddaughter. I failed you, and I will regret it for the rest of my life. I was calling to see if maybe someday you might forgive a foolish old woman. Something loosened in my chest. Not quite forgiveness. Not yet. But something softer than the anger I'd carried. Maybe someday, I whispered. I'm not ready yet, but maybe. That's more than I deserve, she said. I'm proud of you, Maya. I read about you making Dean's List. Your parents don't deserve to know how extraordinary you turned out. We talked for an hour. She told me about her own adopted brother, a secret family shame she'd buried for decades, how she'd let prejudice and fear guide her words, how seeing my parents destroy their family woke her up too late. When we hung up, I felt something shift. Not healing, but the beginning of it. Spring semester brought another surprise. I was studying in the library when I got an email from Sarah Bennett. Subject line, I'm sorry. I stared at it for 10 minutes before deleting it unread. Then I blocked her email address and Dad's too. Some apologies come too late. Some damage can't be undone with words. I learned that love isn't biology. Mrs. Rodriguez proved that. Grandma Bennett's late awakening proved that. Real family is the people who choose you and keep choosing you, even when it's hard. My parents had the chance to be that family. They chose differently. Their loss, not mine. 5 years later, I stood in front of a mirror in a small office at Yale Law School, adjusting my graduation robe. Juris Doctor. Top 10% of my class. Job offers from 3 major firms in New York. At 24 years old, I'd built a life my 17-year-old self could barely have imagined. Mrs. Rodriguez sat in the front row of the ceremony, Patricia beside her. Grandma Bennett came too, frail but beaming. Priya, who'd become like a sister to me, held up a ridiculous poster that said, "That's my lawyer bestie." Jessica flew in from California where she was finishing med school. This was my family now. Chosen, earned, real. After the ceremony, we celebrated at a small Italian restaurant in downtown New Haven. Grandma Bennett pulled me aside, pressing an envelope into my hands. "What's this?" I asked. "Open it later," she said, her eyes misty. That night, alone in my apartment, I opened the envelope. Inside was a check for $50,000 and a handwritten letter. "Maya, this is the money I set aside for Ethan's future. But he has parents who will provide for him, even if they're terrible people. You built your future alone, and I want to contribute to what comes next. Use it for whatever dream you're chasing. You've earned it 1,000 times over. With love and profound regret, Grandma B." I cried then, not from sadness but from the overwhelming realization that I'd survived. I'd more than survived. I thrived. I never heard from my parents again. Through Grandma, I learned they'd had another child, a daughter this time. Ethan was in first grade, apparently bright and spoiled. They'd moved to a bigger house in Greenwich, upgraded their perfect biological family. Sometimes I wondered if they ever thought about me, if they ever regretted their choice. But mostly I didn't think about them at all. Last month, I was featured in Yale Law School's alumni magazine for my work with adoption rights and family law reform. The article mentioned my background, how I'd been discarded by my adoptive parents and fought my way through anyway. It went viral on social media. My inbox flooded with messages from other adoptees who'd experienced similar rejection. Their stories broke my heart and fueled my purpose. I'm building a nonprofit now, legal services for adopted children whose families abandon them. I'm turning my pain into protection for others. That's the best revenge there is. And you know what? I'm happy. Genuinely, deeply happy. I have people who love me unconditionally. I have a career that matters. I have a future I built with my own hands. If you've watched this whole story, thank you from the bottom of my heart. If you've experienced anything similar, please know you're not alone and you're not disposable. You're worthy of love, of family, of everything beautiful in this world. Hit that like button if this story touched you. Subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming impossible odds, and comment below about what you'd like to hear next. Your support means everything. Some families are born. The best ones are built.